Storm of Progress is about an overarching view of German art that looks beyond a specific time period to examining across 200 years of artistic production. How do we utilize our incredibly rich German art collection to really tell a story that encompasses multiple time periods, multiple wars, that moves from Germany before it was a country to the Germany that we know today?
We have this wonderful collection of German art. It really is grounded in the bequest of Morton May in 1983, which suddenly gave us the largest collection of work by Max Beckmann in the world. We have 39 paintings by Max Beckmann in our collection, a number of which we're showcasing in this exhibition. The exhibition has come together practically because of the situation with COVID-19. So we had to look to our collection and think about a show that we could put together fairly quickly and really showcase the strengths of our collection. And this is what we've done with this show.
Another interesting opportunity that this show has provided us has been to take some objects that people might be really familiar with from our permanent collection galleries or from past exhibitions and show them in a context with other works from the period. As we were thinking about what to include in the show, part of it was looking at sort of the important moments of German history and how we would want to tell those.
The first inspiration for the exhibition title came from a somewhat obscure source, actually. I'm a big fan of the philosopher and cultural theorist named Walter Benjamin, who was active in the first half of the 20th century in Germany. In 1940, he wrote this groundbreaking essay titled On the Concept of History. You have the hope for a better future. You have a hope for a future that society can construct so that we all can be in kind of a better world. And yet when you bring those two kind of terms together, you have this creative conflict. And that's what you see in a lot of these works.
People maybe don't realize that, in 1800, in the early 19th century, there was no German nation. The 19th century sees the kind of development of ideas of nationhood in Germany. Artists were traveling around the different provinces of Germany and sort of starting to think about the variety of the geography in those provinces with a view to the construction of the wider German nation. So to take the example of Caspar David Friedrich, who's the leading painter of German Romanticism, we acquired a painting by him in 2018 called Sunburst in the Riesengebirge. It shows a mountain range on what is now the border of the Czech Republic and Poland, what was then part of Bavaria.
We have one of the nation's leading collections of German Expressionism. It was the dominant style of modern art in Germany. It really starts up, sort of tragically, in the years right leading up to World War I, and then it continues slightly after. But its heyday is that period of 1910 to 1914. It's characterized by very bright colors. It's also characterized by a certain interiority, a sense that they are abstracting their works as a rejection of the outside world, but also as a turn inward. One of the works that I'm most excited about is Ernst Ludwig Kirchner's View from a Window. What's fantastic about this painting is that we know so much about it. It's not just a view from any old window, it's a view from his studio window. We know where the studio is located, the building is still there, and you can see the same view. The last section of the material leading up to World War II focuses on this interconnection of art and industry. In Germany, industry was not, for some artists, industry was not considered to be incompatible with art. You could look at a machine and you could think it's ugly, and you could think it's industrial, and it's not worthy of any sort of artistic treatment. But for German artists working in 1915, 1925, the machine represented the apex of precision. It represented a new kind of beauty. There was also a new obsession with technological media being used to make art. Photography, film. the equipment for which had been around for a long time, but there was a new interest in utilizing that equipment for artistic means. A good example of that is Rangar Patch's fantastic photograph of industrial valves.
One of the things we really kind of were interested in was this moment of capitalist realism, German pop art. And German artists started using everyday objects in their artwork the same way as American pop artists. And one of my favorites is this Dieter Roth piece. And Dieter Roth was a Swiss-born artist, and he would use food a lot. Suddenly, that idea of West Germany's economic miracle, or the sort of recovery of West Germany from the destruction of World War II, really becomes much more obvious and much more clarified.
The gallery Performative Impulses looks at performance art in Germany in the post-war era, which became incredibly important to many artists. There was, as we use in the title, a performative impulse of artists to work outside of traditional methods of painting and of sculpture, but actually to embrace art as a lived experience, as something that extends into your everyday reality, and a lot of the times into your political reality. And really the main figure for this entire section is the artist Joseph Beuys, who became, in so many ways, the godfather of German performance art. In this gallery is one of his most iconic works, which is a felt suit, and it was used in a Vietnam War protest performance. So what we have is an object that's left over from the performance as a way for us to think about what he was doing, think about what these performances meant, but still have something that's around for the future. So the gallery Cold War Paintings is really interesting for this show in particular because in previous iterations of post-war German art shows at the St. Louis Art Museum, we've separated figuration and abstraction for many reasons. There's good reasons to do that. But here, we actually decided to look at painting in the Cold War era from about 1970 to 1989 and compare abstraction and figuration to show them in the same gallery together, to look at how abstraction and figuration were used in many different ways by artists who were dealing with Germany's division and dealing with the Cold War as a global, sort of international phenomenon. One of the paintings in this gallery that really emphasizes this idea of Cold War abstraction is Gerhard Richter's Ulber from 1986. For him, abstract painting in this era was a way to extend that painterly idea into the realm of visual abstraction. And part of that is Richter came out of East Germany. He was trained in a socialist realist art school in Dresden, the Dresden Art Academy, and he painted murals of happy communist scenes. And then he fled right before the Berlin Wall went up. And so for him, realism, abstraction, East-West Germany, these things all were a dichotomy to him that he was thinking through and dealing with in his art.
With the Blurring Boundaries Gallery, it provided us a new sort of opportunity, a new way of thinking about how to bring photography into these conversations. And we ended up incorporating two amazing photographs in that gallery, one by Bertha Gutschau and one by Simona Nieweg. And the Gutschau is a really cool example of new kind of emerging photography techniques, because what Gutschau has done with the photograph is actually taken a bunch of different photographs of people in all sorts of situations and superimposed them over a landscape photograph to create a sort of constructed landscape that almost looks back to these very historical depictions of landscape. And the Nieweg is also looking at landscape as a sort of holder of identity. In the photograph, you see just these cabbages. I've never seen such beautiful cabbages with the sort of light shining on them. Almost looks like a historic depiction of a sort of German field, like a landscape painting. But in the background, you see an urban center. So it allows us to tell these stories of the way that urban life changed and the way really rural life as well changed in the post-war period, how the landscape physically changed.
We have this world-class collection in St. Louis. And I think it's a wonderful opportunity for St. Louisans to come and see it. Several of the works which are in the exhibition are not normally on view, so it's an opportunity to see works which are not normally seen. And it's an opportunity to sort of, really tap into this history that we have in our town, a very special history of collecting German art. A lot of this art was created in moments of historic turbulence. So I think, we can learn quite a bit from looking at how these artists, confronted their own historical moments and dealt with it.
They redefined what it meant to be an artist. They wanted to make art that really reflected what they saw in their daily lives. I see a deep intellectual engagement with the questions of their day and with the questions of their history. And it doesn't always make the happiest art, and it doesn't always make the prettiest art, but it makes deeply fascinating art that you can just endlessly ask questions about these paintings. And there's always more questions to ask, and the answers are always fascinating.